Okay, in typical WoT spoilers fashion, it has been far too long since we've had a chance to read off the patron names. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. The last time we did this was actually March 22nd. The world was a very different place, and you guys have been amazing in supporting us through the lockdown for the last couple of months, and there have been a bunch of you who have... Well, if you've kept your support up through the lockdown, we have been super thankful for that. And if you've managed to pledge during it, that's even better. So I know episodes have not always been coming out on a regular basis. Hopefully you've seen they've been a little bit longer than usual, but I will say it's been tough for us to maintain during the pandemic, and I'm sure it has been for all of you as well. So just a huge thank you to everyone who's been supporting us. I will let you know that if you haven't received merch, I will be sending that out here soon. So do apologize that again, I feel like I'm a broken record here where I apologize for the same thing every time, but I haven't been on top of it as I wanted to be, and I should be sending out merch soon. So let me go ahead and start. Again, the last person we thanked in March, so I'm going back to March 22nd. So $2 pledge by Alex London. And I want to shout out Alex London as well. He's contacted me about advertising his book. It is called The Stranger's Orphan, excuse me. I got started on reading it, and I enjoyed the beginning of it immensely. I have not had a chance to finish it, but please go check out Alex London's book, The Stranger's Orphan, and just see what you think. He's done a lot. He's reached out to us, and he's been a great fan, so I really do appreciate that. And I'm sorry I dropped the ball on getting back to him on advertising his book. So here's my chance to make up for that and say go check it out right now if you are looking for something to read. And he is a supporter of us. So here's a name I've seen before: Christian Ambrose, Liz Pittman upped her pledge, Jackson Trappett upped his pledge. I got a new pledge from Adrian Bateman. Thank you, Adrian. A pledge from Bryn Fidel, I'll go with that. Kevin Hendrick, CRM201 upped it. Mike Estep, which we've heard many times, upped his pledge. Thank you, Mike. Dylan Schindler upped their pledge. Thank you. Sharon Ramsey upped their pledge. Astra Perkins, we got a new pledge. Thank you. Robin Nielsen, pledge. Thank you. Sarah Quiggle pledged. Adam Pijot. Sir Twin Grain gave us a nice big bonus in April. Thank you. Justin Fulton pledged. Tiana Bird, thank you. Catherine Black upped her pledge. Jackson Trappett upped his pledge. Carolyn McLaughlin pledged, thank you. Alexander Untaru pledged. Sam pledged. Ellie MM upped her pledge. And Kevin Silvies pledged, thank you. Antoine Benoit, Henry Nye, NYH, thank you. James McGrath, Catherine Bowman, Catherine Montgomery. First one's a C, second one's a K. You guys can fight that one out. Dante Heidemark, Ashley Pearson, Masta Zaxta. I like that one. It's a nice little fun name. And Margaret Dietloff. And that takes us through April. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Really appreciate everybody who pledged in April. Moving on to May. Ken Paterka, thank you. Rand's Left Hand. Yeah, poor isolated guy. Thank you for pledging. Milan, thank you. John Gaines. Michael McFadden. Liz Willoughby. Charlie Newton. Justin. Jason Ivans. Jeremy B. Noah E. Mastazasta upped his pledge in May. Teddy S. Julie Fair. Kevin Cook. Jaster Gaydon. Donald Morton. Pauline Smith, Julia Collings. And that puts us through May. Brings us to June. Rachel Feitel, Janusz Marozak, hopefully I didn't butcher that one too bad. Matthew Drake, Jonathan Kowalski. Jonathan Kokowski. The only gay in the Two Rivers. That's what you think. Mark Sheets, Chad. Devin Moore, thank you, Devin. Amanda Wilkins, Carolyn. Tiana Badillo, Annalise Amaro upped her pledge, thank you. James Scriven, Maria Mikeland, Tehran, Derek, thank you. That puts us through June, moving on to July. Oliver Hammond, thank you. Shauna Bishop, thank you. Aaron Lusandra, I think. It's all one word, so that's a bit of a tough one. Jay Bloomers, Lila Jen, I like it. David Hill, William Aldinger IV, Jamie Connolly, Alina Fischel, Louis Spector, Kenneth Tinknell, Oyvind Torgerson, Marguerite Havgar, which I think I've seen that name before. Marguerite Detloff, thank you for upping that. Bjorn Moren. And that brings us through this month. Thank you everyone who donated. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you how much it means to me, especially in the rough times. For anyone who had to delete their pledge or lower their pledge, I totally understand. I appreciate all the money that you sent to us. And I just hope everyone out there is doing well and taking care of themselves. I hope you have a wonderful day. Oh, and while I was recording this, Charles Williamson pledged. Thank you, Charles.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heilar.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
So we got together a couple days ago. We'd both been pretty well quarantined, so we met in person for the first time since this whole thing started.
Yeah.
Julia made some delicious pasta and sauce. The sauce was really fantastic.
Yeah. Bolognese, I think. I should know. If I'm saying that right, but not exactly. Heck yeah, I'm cooking, guys.
Yeah, and we had like a big bunch of fresh blueberries and just hummus and guac and chips, and it felt a little nice to feel at least a little normal for a minute. Be like, oh yeah, this is what people used to do.
Agreed. Yeah, it's nice to do that. I was gonna say before, I think honestly we quarantined better than most, or at least
I would agree with that. Yeah,
we're on the in the group of people who have probably taken this who took this seriously, because even my for instance, like I said, we quarantined harder for a couple of weeks so that we could go to that baby shower some weeks ago or a month ago. That meant we literally almost did not leave the house. Or I went for a run on the days that I was scheduled to run, either late at night or really early in the morning, and a run in the middle of the street in the industrial district. Mm-hmm. And then there were times where I didn't even see anyone. And I've just come to realize more recently that I don't think anyone else is really taking it that seriously.
No, I've got my mask that I wear whenever I leave the house. We go grocery shopping once a month at the beginning of the month, and we pick up a month's worth of groceries. I supplement it with some 7-Eleven runs, but
yeah, exactly. I went to a 7-Eleven last week, and I turned around from the soda case, and there were all these people standing behind me with no mask on. I'm like, oh great, I'm the only one in here wearing a mask. What's the point?
And I see a bunch of and it's mandated by law. People should be. Or by the governor. I'm not sure that has the force of law. But yeah, I see people not wearing masks inside all the time. So it's been frustrating. And I wear the mask when I take Timber to the park, which is outside, and I'm literally the only one at the park with a mask on most of the time.
Yeah.
And that I get a little bit, because you can distance at the park and you are outside, but at the same time sometimes you got to step in and grab the dogs and you get close to people. And so it's hard to really avoid. But yeah, sorry. What were we talking about? Quarantining. Yeah, so but other than that, I go to the park, I walk Timber because I have to take him outside once a week, grocery trip. But other than that, I am an introvert. I am in my apartment. I am good at this. Right? I quarantine. My normal life is what people are doing now to quarantine. And my quarantine life, people are wait, you haven't seen another human in how long? Now, I will say,
yeah.
Travis is probably takes it slightly less seriously than I do, but not much less.
And he's got
one guy.
That was very responsible. He has a setup with a partner right now, and they're just seeing each other. Yeah, it sounded like it was at least very well thought out.
Mm-hmm. And he went to some of the protests, but he stopped because he didn't feel safe.
Yeah,
Like, he didn't feel like it was possible to be protesting and be safe.
I kind of showed up to the outskirts of one, and I was like, holy shit, this is a bad idea. So I sent some money instead. That's what I did. Which, I don't even know where that money goes or if it does any good.
We could talk about casting. We've seen a couple of casting that I think we kind of knew about before, but it's been officially confirmed. We got Eamon Valda. We got Geofram Bornhold. Apparently, where are you getting that from, The Only Gay in the Two Rivers? He says we're getting Min, Dane, and Byar next week. I haven't seen that information anywhere else. But was that a WoT on Prime thing?
Could be. I saw some chatter on the internet about some of the White Cloaks, at least two of the White Cloaks, but I think you named them. What was it again? Bornhold and Neal, or Bornhold and
Valda. Eamon Valda. Which is interesting, because Valda's not really in that early chapter. He's only in the books much later. I also don't know if you saw the... Oh, right, and Steve, of course. They've released... Somebody is playing an actor name, or a character named Steve. The assumption is that's a code name for a different character, possibly LTT, possibly...
No, I got you. They're naming him Steve.
Shamael,
Or
Elias. Yeah.
Trying to think, who would play... Yeah. Ish is too important to... Has he been cast yet?
Ishamael?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I don't
No,
think
not officially. No.
Maybe Steve is Baalzamon.
Right. That would be my assumption. That's sort of what everyone's like, ooh, who's Steve? And it's like, well, I mean, probably one of the bad guy. That's
Yeah. Unless it's not a dude at all, and they're just using Steve to throw us totally off.
Totally possible.
Like actually casting Swan or something. I don't know. Steve is Bella. I heard Bella got cast though. Is that? I think that's true.
Yes, Bella. Well, somebody has to do the voice, right?
The voice of God. Was actually my initial idea of Steve. I was like, maybe that's
right.
the voice, but I was like, well, why would they have to cast an actor? Just have
maybe
do that.
they have those that one thing that Rand talks to God in the end of The Eye of the World about.
Yeah, and
it's like that big capital letter voice.
Maybe the voice of God is someone really effing famous, and they don't want to tell us, And you only hear it a few times in the series, but there's some famous actor out there.
Well, we know who the actor is.
Oh, who's the actor?
We just don't know who the I don't know, but you can look it up.
Yes, I can.
The other thing that was exciting, I'm not sure how exciting, but mildly exciting, the Daily Trolloc came out with top Wheel of Time fan pages on Instagram, and we made the top 10. Top 8, actually.
Oh, I think someone did send that to me. That was pretty... It's always good to feel included.
I may have sent that to you.
Oh, yeah, I think you did.
So, I was pretty excited about that. And everything else is like, you got Dragonmount, which is the official, the unofficial fan page, but whatever. Then you've got Wheel of Time Prime, which is the official TV one. There's a bunch of Wheel of Time Amazon, Wheel of Time Official, the Wheel of Time fan page. We are the top ranked podcast by far. Everything else is just
show stuff,
news about the TV show. Yeah, show stuff.
Yeah,
and then Dragon.
I hadn't even realized a lot of those accounts had grown so huge so fast. But people want to know everything they can about the show. Sadly, there's only so much to know.
Right? But I think people any little detail is getting...
Oh, for sure. I get it.
Broadcast widely. There's a bit of an echo chamber going on.
People want to speculate and argue with each other about who's right and who isn't.
Right.
Or whose speculation is the best speculation, I guess that's what the arguing's about.
Sure. Well, we got to go see if we can fight them again, because they've grown right past us, so we got to see if we can grab some of those followers.
Blow up some Insta.
That's what I'm thinking. Now that we've got, because what we used to do is when we first started the podcast, we'd go out and find D&D Wheel of Time groups and any sort of White Tower group. But now there's these TV
less fan community.
Right now it's hey, here's the fan community right here. I guess we should go hunt them down and be like, hey, if you're following WoT on Prime.
There's the role players and the people that liked the art, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
A few people still debating plot points or whatever, but there wasn't even a lot of that. Speaking of which...
But I'm telling you, more and more people, especially in quarantine, I'm seeing tons of people being like, finish Wheel of Time for the first time, or rereading Wheel of Time, and I'm like, dude, we're right here for you. We got a podcast that's going to give you all the details so you can be the I told you so person for all of your friends when watching the show.
I was actually thinking about maybe trying to do another round of ads, and then I simultaneously felt bad about giving Facebook any money because they own Instagram too. So, but
oh god, yeah. But they're so goddamn effective.
Yeah, I'll probably do it because sure.
It's the conundrum, right? That's the conundrum of advertisers in Facebook. Is like, I hate what they support and I hate the way they do their business. But there is no other. There's no way that is nearly as cheap and gets to nearly as many people as effectively.
Yeah, I was actually listening to Pod Save this morning, and somebody made the same point. I think it was somebody from the Biden campaign made the same point. They're like, yeah, we kind of don't feel great about giving Facebook money, but we're running right up to the election here, and so what do? Relinquish it entirely? No, okay, no, we can't do that.
I stole that argument from Pod Save this morning.
Oh, really?
So that's... Yeah.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and there was like 2.5 hours total. There was like 2 episodes that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
So that's most of what I did.
I was pretty much quoting them. Yeah. We both listen to the same podcasts. We may think alike sometimes.
This happens when I'm talking to Julia's brother sometimes because we listen to all the same. He listens to Pod Save and stuff, so we have like the same points to make. You
start making the same arguments. Yeah. If someone else jumps in the conversation and you catch them in the crossfires, you make the first point and they make the second point and you make the third point.
Crushing it.
It's pretty much exactly what Suian and Leanne are doing in Chapter 7, A Matter of Thought.
And our symbol is the twisted stone ring. Seated on her mattress, Elayne finished the 100 strokes with her left hand, then put the hairbrush away in her small leather traveling case, and pushed it back under the narrow bed. A dull ache rested behind her eyes from a day spent channeling, making Terengrial. Too often trying to make Terengrial. Nynaeve, balanced atop their loose-jointed stool, had long since completed brushing her waist-length hair, and was nearly done replaiting her braid loosely for sleep. Sweat made her face glisten. Even with one window open, the small room was stifling. The moon hung fat in a star-filled black sky. Their stub of candle provided a fitful glow. Candles and lamp oil were in short supply in Salidar. No one got more than a scrap of light at night unless they had to work with pen and ink. The room truly was cramped, with little space to move around the 2 short beds. Most of what they owned was packed away in a pair of battered brass-bound chests. Except its dresses and cloaks they certainly had no need of now, hung from pegs in the walls, where ragged holes in the crazed, yellowing plaster showed the lathing beneath. A tiny table, with a tilt, was shoved between the beds, and a rickety washstand in the corner held a white pitcher and basin with an amazing number of chips between them. Even accepted who had their heads patted at every turn were not indulged. A handful of bedraggled blue and white wildflowers, fooled by the weather into blooming late, and not very well, stuck out of a yellow vase with a broken neck between a pair of brown pottery cups on the table. The only other spot of color was a green-striped song sparrow in a wicker cage. Elayne was nursing it for a broken wing. She had tried her small skill with healing on another bird, but songbirds at least were too small to survive the shock. No complaining, she told herself firmly. Aes Sedai lived a little better, novices and servants a little worse, and Gareth Bryn's soldiers slept on the ground most often. What can't be changed must be endured. Linny used to say that all the time. Well, Salidar held small enough comfort, and no luxury, and no coolness either. Pulling her shift away from her body, she blew down her front. We want to be there ahead of them, Nynaeve. You know how they go on if they have to wait. Not a breath of breeze stirred, and the parched air seemed full of perspiration from every pore. There must be something that could be done about the weather. Of course, if there was, Seafolk Windfinders would probably have done it. But she still might think of something. If only the Aes Sedai would give her time enough away from Terengrial. I was accepted. She supposedly could take her studies where she wanted, but if they thought I could eat and show them how to make terangrial at the same time, I wouldn't have a minute to myself. At least there would be a break in that tomorrow. Shifting to her bed, Nynaeve frowned and fiddled with the Adam bracelet on her wrist. She always insisted one of them wear it, even when they slept, though it produced decidedly odd and unpleasant dreams. There was hardly need. The Adam would hold Moghedien just as well, hanging on a peg, and on top of that, she shared a truly tiny cubbyhole with Birgitte. Birgitte was as good a guard as could be, and besides, Moghedien almost wept any time Birgitte so much as frowned. She had the least reason to want Moghedien alive, the most to want her dead, which the woman knew very well. Tonight, the bracelet would be less use than usual. Figured I'd leave it there.
All right, so who do we have to pay for the buddy comedy? Birgitte and Moghedien. One's a hero of the Horn, the other's a Forsaken. Let's see how they live together.
In The Odd Couple, 2. Do you remember that old show?
Yep. Insert theme of The Odd Couple here.
One's a white-collar Chad, and the other guy's a mild-mannered plumber. How will they get along? I don't really remember anything about the show, but as far as I can remember, that was basically the concept. Like, as if it would be so impossible that that those two guys could
Right. It's like one was messy and one was neat. Like, that was like what they had.
Basically, yeah.
And I was going to say, speaking of gay representation, no, I don't think so. It was the...
Possibly. That was one of those early times when you could kind of be like, is that what they were really saying?
Right. These two guys living together, having an interesting relationship. After breaking up with their wives. Can't imagine what they're referring to. So, okay, my actual question was, why are they not using globes of light? Don't those seem like the simplest, silliest, easiest thing to, like, why are they depending on scraps of candles? I mean, I guess novices aren't allowed.
I wondered the same thing. Is it
channel?
Because they're not allowed to channel? Also, yeah, why would anyone who could channel be very concerned about having a candle? I guess I could understand how eventually...
But Accepted should be able to channel on their own, at least. So Accepted and Aes Sedai should totally be able to have, like, little globes of light if they want to. And then save all the candles for...
people who can't channel.
The novices and the... Yeah.
I could see how you'd run out of them eventually, because there's just going to be way more people that can't channel always. But, yeah, I don't know why Elayne's worried about it.
It was a question.
Sometimes I feel like RJ just wants to tell us a thing about, the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he spent a lot of time here telling us about how there's, like, holes in the walls and everything's broken, like, nothing's really in good repair. And also they don't even have enough. They just have, like, the stub of a candle, and that's all they're allowed to have. I feel like he's just kind of telling us, like,
totally,
there's nothing here. This is hardship. And if Aes Sedai are doing little better than that, that's saying something,
And part of me had an idea that maybe one of the things he's saying is also that Aes Sedai don't tend to think about day-to-day uses of the power. I mean, they really put using the one power up on a pedestal. Like, look at the way they treat Elida growing flowers. That's a waste of the one power, right? Like, it seems to be there's an idea that you should only use the one power for noble reasons.
Yeah, Elayne has that thought later, and I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because I had the same thought. Like, why is that so awful? How much power is that actually using up, And if she hadn't used it for that, what was it she would have used it for otherwise? That was so important.
Right. Like 5 minutes of her being slightly tired is like and it's not like she's channeling constantly as the Amerlin Seat. It's not like she has to drain her power and that she can't heal the flocks of people who are coming to the White Tower for healing because their resources are stretched so thin. They're not doing anything with the power. Like, just sitting there. Why not make some flowers?
that kind of thinking could almost make sense later when we have like Perrin's couple of channelers that he uses for like an entire army, or to make gateways and do healing and stuff. who are like constantly exhausted at certain points in the series. But that makes sense.
Pushed to their edge of the limit.
Yeah.
Right.
Elida sits around all day and like makes decisions. I mean, Aradia kind of made the point that it's tradition, she wrote in a silly way.
Right.
And she's right. It's they do it that way because people do it that way. I think that's probably really what's happening. No one's thinking about it. It's just, this is the way it's done. And, you know.
Is that type called camel case? Because it's got all the humps in it? Capitalized.
I don't know. I don't know. Are you being funny or is that what it's called?
No, I actually
sarcasm
think it's...
case? Maybe. It might be. It's like the way people type when they want to make a statement that makes fun of itself.
Well, camel case means something very particular, I guess. It's a programming thing that says the first letter of each word is capitalized except for the first word in the sentence. So it's basically the opposite of what you would normally do in a sentence.
Oh, weird.
Right, normally you capitalize the first... And a lot of programmers use that because it's how you sort of write out variable names without having spaces in it. And then a capitalized variable name means something different. Anyway, not super important. Camel case is a thing, but not what I thought it was. So, yeah, Aradia was using probably sarcasm case, which is a meme thing more than anything else.
Painted Dad wrote, "It took centuries for us to finally realize how well that works for sarcasm." Random capitalization thing.
Yeah. I also like the /s. That's always been my favorite. Just so, like...
Yeah, just
if you write out
in case you didn't know, begin here, end here. It's very precise. Yeah. I like it too.
Sarcasm. Also programming inspired. So it's amazing how much of the internet comes from the people who made it. Wow! That seems like a completely obvious statement now that I think about it. It's amazing how much of this thing came from the people who made it. Yes, that's how things happen. Okay, anyway, moving on. Back to the book. While I amaze myself with my own brilliance. I like a little foreshadowing here where she says the sea folk windfinders would have probably done something about the weather.
If they could have.
If they had the bowl of the winds, they would have.
Yeah. And that's not too far off. The whole bowl of the wind sequence and everything.
Right, no, that's what I was saying. I think this is great foreshadowing for that whole sequence.
Let me see Elayne go on. Of course, I don't know about the Bowl of the Winds yet, but we see Elayne go on about making terangrial, and those are like right up against each other. She was complaining about having to make. She's been producing the dream terangrial for the Aes Sedai, and I guess just the modified Adam right now. And
in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like she's an amateur playing with fireworks. Like, she kind of knows how to make them, but she's not around. They're very dangerous, and no one has made them before that's still alive. They've been using these, like, ancient fireworks they found in a tomb. And, like, yeah, there's a possibility that these things could blow up in her face. They're pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and even if you have the skill and the technology and the knowledge to take apart a bullet, do you put it back together? You know, do you risk it? Like, yeah, you think you know what you're doing, but how confident are you? Will you bet your life on it?
And then if you put it in the gun and pull the trigger, are you sure it's going to fire? Right?
Or just explode the gun? Yeah.
Right.
Nah.
How confident are you that you could take apart a gun, then make a complete replica of that gun, put it together, and have it fire?
Sure. And this is not even really a good analogy because, like, a bullet or a gun are pretty simple technology in comparison, or at least I imagine it, you know.
I always think of these as more like detailed computer code.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So I think this paragraph here I'm going to read. The fine structure of her copies was the same. The way the tiniest bits of them, too small to see or even detect without the one power, were arranged. Why should the colors matter? Which, by the way, I always think of like quantum quarks have a property called color, but that's a whole nother thing. Why should the colors matter? There seemed to be one common thread in those tiny structures for the terangrial that required channeling to work, and another for those that simply made use of the power. Stumbling on that was what allowed her to even attempt to make original terangrial. So what I'm guessing is basically like somehow in the terangrial she's making a thread that uses ambient power, and we see a lot of terangrial do that, and then she's able to differentiate that from the one that requires channeling into. And that has allowed her to make the stone ring ter'angreal. There's all sorts of like, I think that Jordan is putting some quantum weirdness in here, as Aradia says. I like that. It's just this little bits, and also like obviously changing the very atomic structure of these ter'angreal when they are made into what they are. And I think what they're doing is basically writing the code of the one power into the molecular structure of the stone, and it changes it into something else.
I agree with that. And I don't know that I'll be able to track down the line exactly, but what I'm thinking of is at some point, this is later when Elayne's in the dream, but she's just having the thought. She says something in her mind that stuck out to me, which is something like, and these ones were made from a disc which was once iron, or something like that, implying that it no longer is.
Sure.
But it looks like it, but it's not anymore. And so I think about it very much in the same way. Like once you take that piece of silver or iron or whatever and you make a ter'angreal out of it, it's not silver or iron or whatever anymore. It's something totally different, although it may look kind of like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Stone in this case for the twisted stone ter'angreal, which we often say stone, but they're not really that.
Yeah.
It's what they were made out of originally. But I like Kelsey's analogy that it's kind of like a loom, that like it's basically, it's the structure, it's the pattern you use to produce the weaving.
That's a very appropriate analogy. Yeah. A weave.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was just going to point out that here Elayne is thinking that she's thinking about a blue stone ring ter'angreal. She made one that was totally blue, and it only gave you nightmares. And she just doesn't understand why the color would matter. She comes to no conclusion, but that's what she's thinking about there. It apparently does matter.
I think Picasso picked that up for a while. I call it his blueprint.
Yeah. Wow. Some of those paintings are kind of nightmarish, too.
Uh-huh.
Weird angles and stuff. It always kind of weirded me out.
The wheel turns. What can we say? That was just they can't destroy it. It just got left over.
Yeah.
Slightly after that, we get a timeline. I don't know if you picked that one out.
What are you referring to? A timeline?
Egwene had been injured a month and a half ago in Cairhien on the day Moraine and Lanfear died, the day Lan vanished. So it's been exactly, let's say, 6 weeks since the end of Fires of Heaven. And we know there was 17 days in there in the prologue, so the prologue has happened at some point within those 6 weeks.
I'm nodding. Final two-ish. I actually didn't catch that timeline.
Because it's a pretty solid period of time from the end of Fires of Heaven to where we are now.
Yeah. And Egwene was injured, but is there something else happening here right now? Other than, is that the only reason the Wise Ones aren't letting her into the dream, or did she get caught for going to the dream when she's not supposed to also?
No, we see from her perspective, she is just not allowed because, she got zapped by Lanfear and she's had those headaches. And they're saying you have to stay out of the dream until the headaches are completely gone. And they do that whole thing where they make her like run and jump and breathe and look in her eyes and squat. And they think she's going to hurt herself. And she's going in anyway, obviously, but she's not supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why she's not here. Is because if she shows up, obviously, like it'll be in front of everybody and they'll be like, you go.
I had forgotten the cause of the headaches.
Yeah, it was complete. Lanfear gave her the Who's Avienda and zapped her and Avienda, but Egwene got the worst of it. Avienda was pretty much spared the worst of the zapping. So she didn't have the headaches, but yeah. That was the whole thing. At the end of the Fires of Heaven, she gets zapped, and then basically her first night back in the dream, the little tower calls her back to be the Emerald Seat. So she never really gets any more training out of the dream from that point on, from the Wise Ones. She asked them questions, and she's working things out on her own, but that's sort of the end of her, I want to say, apprenticeship to the Wise Ones.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Basically, over the next couple of pages, it looks like Nynaeve and Elayne just go into the dream, meet Siuan and Leane, and then they wait. And the reason I was looking ahead really quick is because you're talking about Egwene essentially reporting to become the Amyrlin Seat, although she may not know it while it's happening. And in the scene where, like I said, the four women are then waiting for essentially the Salidar Six to show up. and they're all going to go to the White Tower together. But as the Salidar Six show up, they're having that conversation, if you remember, and Elayne here is just part of it.
Yeah.
And they're clearly talking about, like...
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about that in detail. I have it highlighted in red. I was like, ooh,
oh, okay, yeah.
This is them talking about Egwene as Amyrlin Seat.
And other than that, before that, there's like some bickering between some of the women here, but I don't really have anything in particular between where we just were and when the Salidar Six show up.
Just a few points about the ter'angreal. If you're channeling into any of those spirit ter'angreal, you can't channel very well. If you are using any of the copies, you can't channel very well. Really, Suian is the only one who could channel very well, except she can't channel. So basically, no one in this group has any channeling power right now.
And I also kind of wanted to point out, I had almost forgotten that I wanted to, at the end of this, we have like one paragraph from Demandred's perspective. And he had seen, I think it was Elayne, in the dream using one of the ter'angreal. And he notes that it's a type of ter'angreal that used to be given to like students, to like kids, to learn how to use them.
Right.
And that's what...
Yeah, I think that's an important point that we use.
I think that's what Elayne has been copying. She's, should I say, maybe perhaps quite lucky. A lot of these women are that they're using ter'angreal designed for students, for people who are learning.
Right.
They don't know that. They just are.
There's probably some safeguards built in or something that we don't know about. Who's really sure, but
yeah,
it would make sense.
I'm sure that the mistiness I always imagined as it's part of the safeguard. You're not fully in there. You're only partly in, you know? You can start to learn some of the techniques and things, but maybe your mind isn't fully there, so if something does go wrong, you know.
So my theory about this chapter, the nightmare they encounter, was put there by Demandred.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with that. I didn't have that thought before you said that, but I didn't think that the nightmare was natural either.
I got to the end and I'm like, he was like, ha, I pulled the string, and I'm like, what did you do? You did nothing. Like, and I'm like, oh, well, what's the one thing that sent Elayne off? It was sort of her being separated from the rest because of the stream. Maybe he did it, you know, who knows? Like that the best I can see is he dropped a terrible dream that had this effect.
Yeah. Because
he's sowing chaos wherever he can. Keep our eye out for that. But yeah, do you want to read this section of them talking about Egwene? Which this is something that I don't think I caught until this specific. It's just such an easy paragraph. Because you're like, I'm not really sure, without knowing the subject, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear this with the context of they are talking about bringing Egwene back and making her the Amyrlin Seat.
And that's why, as they come into Elayne's hearing, the first thing she hears is, it's quote, ... so she knows she's hearing the second part of a sentence. We'll scorn our choice, comma, Carlinia. I'm reading the punctuation because I think that's meant to say, someone will scorn our choice. Don't you agree, Carlinia, is what they're actually saying.
And I think the scorn is there because she's so young, right?
Yeah. But some of the sitters are going to scorn their choice because they understand why you would put such an inexperienced person in such a high office.
Well, I think they're talking about a ruler, right? So the next thing is, as long as no ruler scoffs, why should we care? Oh, well, okay, never mind. You're right.
Or it could be something like, some will scorn our choice, Carlinia. You know, it could be that open. But they will scorn any choice we make. We might as well stay by our decision. You do not need to list the reasons to me again, basically.
I think this is the Six trying to convince the Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Morven says, after all our work with the Hall, we would have a hard time changing our minds now. She's saying, like, what is it called? Lost...
Sunk investment?
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah. No, and just, like, they've convinced everybody already.
Yeah, it's too late to change your mind.
Yeah, it's too late to change your mind. Like, if you came to everybody and was like, actually, I know we've been arguing for this young Amyrlin Seat for all this time, but you know what? Ignore all those arguments. They'd be like, what? Like, now you're completely lost me. So, if anyone comes back, if they came back to anyone and said, okay, now we want you to support somebody completely different, it'd be like, no, I'm going to support the person I want to support.
Yeah.
So they'd lose credibility, I think, if they changed horses in the middle of the race, as they say.
Yeah. Anaya makes the point that it really doesn't matter what anyone other than the sisters think. And I think Carlinia's smart here, and just in saying that, she says what worries her is that if she's easily steered by us, and that's why we're picking her, how easily will she be steered by others? And of course, the answer is she will not be easily steered, but they don't know that yet.
Well, I was going to say, one small flaw in that assumption that she's going to be easily steered.
Yes,
Turns out she's basically a Quendiar anchor. Like, you're not moving her. Like, it's...
And it is kind of funny and definitely a little satisfying that, we watch through a lot of this chapter, Elayne and Nynaeve kind of suffer and struggle to deal with these rude Aes Sedai who are like, oh, you're gonna teach us everything you know about this and sit down and shut up and speak when you're spoken to. And it's like them you see them kind of struggling with the Aes Sedai's, and in this case the Salidar Six's lack of ability to accept that anyone could know anything that they don't, which is it's dumb. They're constantly underestimating everything around them. All Aes Sedai are, really.
I'd also like to make a point.
Yeah.
Myrell knows that Lan is on his way. It's been 6 weeks, literally a month and a half, since he was bonded to her. And she's been feeling him getting closer and closer and closer. And
I'm nodding
she
for
knows
that too.
He loves Nynaeve. She knows about the relationship between the two of them. And Myrell spends this entire chapter coming down hard on Nynaeve. And so I have to assume that she's basically trying to discredit Nynaeve because she doesn't want to give up Lan. Or there's some jealousy going on there.
I would think
Elayne
so,
knew
yeah.
why Myrell was angry now. No, she doesn't.
And probably a lot of jealousy because, we know Myrell holds Lan's bond and Lan is probably thinking about Nynaeve, and Myrell knows that.
Mm-hmm. I'd also like to think about this. Myrell has 3 warders plus Lan. And then read this sentence. A 4th dagger appeared and was gone so quickly, it might have been imagination.
Yeah.
So, remember, she's Ebudari, and Ebudari wear bridal knives. So she has 3 knives, each one for one of her warder that she has married. And that 4th dagger flashing and disappearing is her considering marrying and thinking about Lan.
Yep.
And trying to cover it up.
I'm glad you caught
and
that.
not give it away to Nynaeve.
I did too. For someone who's read the series before, it's probably easy enough to pick out, but I don't think I honestly ever did before or thought much about it because people's clothing is shifting all the time. So it's easy to run right by this line. But she's wearing not just the 1 dagger, but 3 daggers. And we know she has 3 warders at this point. And the 4th is kind of flickering. Like it's almost there. Or like she wants it to be there, but it's not yet. Mm-hmm. Each represents a marriage.
Because she's married her warders, yeah. And she obviously hasn't married Lan. But she's thinking about it. It's not going to go well. And I think for me, one of the reasons I never caught it is it's one of those things where she definitely fades into the background of the Salidar Six. I'm just like, oh, and then I don't realize that she's the one who Lan's bonded to at this moment. It's only, again, through the podcast and research and really trying to put events together that it's helped me realize little things like this all the time. This is one of my favorite little catches. I was like, oh, that's the 4th, that's Lan. Lan, 4th dagger. Like I kind of blew my mind when I saw that today. So yeah.
To extrapolate on that a little bit, that could change how I interpreted the next paragraph, which is basically Elayne thinking about like, oh, I think I know why Myrell's so annoyed because she has to talk to the wise ones every night, like basically alone now. But I think Elaine's totally wrong, probably. Myrell's not annoyed at what she has to do routinely, or that seems less likely than she's annoyed because she knows what's inside Lan's head, and what's inside Lan's head is in front of her.
No, I absolutely think that all of this, they talk about how she's changed over the last couple of weeks, how, things have really been, it's like she's really come down hard on Nynaeve over the last couple of weeks. She's really been upset the last couple of weeks. It's like, well, what do we know has been going on in her head for the last couple of weeks? Like, Lan's been going on in her head, that's what.
Yeah. Megs is suggesting also that Myrelle might be trying to test Nynaeve's metal, kind of mess with her before Lan shows up to see if this girl's really worthy of a warder like Lan. Oop, that was my
Maybe. I don't give her that much credit.
Myrelle? Nah?
Yeah. I think she wants to keep him for herself. Yeah.
She does kind of seem like the type.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, Lan's a prize, so, hard to blame her.
And you remember what happens? She hides him when he shows up. It's only Egwene has to track her down, and it's a bit of a. That's actually a fun leadership one where she kind of knows about a small secret but doesn't give it away and stumbles into a much bigger one. Yeah, I very much enjoy that. But she realizes what's going on as she's walking in. She's like,
yeah, I had never really thought about it much before, but I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. He took the long route. She took the short one. He came over land. She came over to Tel'aran Riyadh. Or will, here in a minute, in a few chapters. She gets to be the Emerald Seat that whole time. He has to, fight his way across half the continent. That's why we don't get to see him for a little while, sadly.
The next thing I have really is a little bit of Elayne thinking about the Wise Ones and how difficult it must be for the Aes Sedai to deal with them. When she's thinking about
it's just an interesting way the meeting between friends in Tel'aran Riyadh became this official meeting between two representative groups, right? Like you had the Wise Ones take over from Egwene and the Aes Sedai take over from Nynaeve and Elayne, and all of a sudden you have Wise Ones and Aes Sedai meeting for the first time, which was just like a meeting of friends. But it tells you that the second you have long distance communication, everyone wants to use it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of the old fights over who gets to use the phone lines. It's like my dad wanted to use it for phone calls, and I wanted to use it for the internet. It's like, give me the ter'angreal now. It's mine. My phone line. It's new technology. Everyone's try it out, see what they can do with it. And I got to say, my stumbling around on the internet back in the early or mid 90s, late 90s, whatever decade you want to call it, feels a lot like they're stumbling around in Tel'aran Riyadh. I wonder what this does. Click, click. Shit. My computer's dead.
Elayne describes the Dreamwalkers as thinking of the world of dreams as their private preserve, which they really do. And Aiel Dreamwalkers were the only humans to visit the dream for the last, as long as anyone can remember.
I think they're also fed up with people who don't know what the hell they're doing, right?
Oh, sure.
You're going to get yourself killed. What are you doing, you moron?
It's from Elaine's perspective, but she thinks the Dreamwalkers... ... not only knew just about everything there was to know about the world of dreams, but looked on it almost as a private preserve. They did not like anyone coming there in ignorance, and had a rough way of dealing with what they saw as foolishness, besides which they were a closed-mouthed lot, apparently fiercely loyal to Rand, unwilling to say much more than that he was alive, or that Egwene would return to Tel'aran Riyadh when she was well enough. I just liked that line. Which probably shows how well the Aes Sedai are doing at negotiating with Wise Ones. So far, they've discovered Rand is not dead, and Egwene will show up when they say so. Basically, is what they've gotten out of the Wise Ones so far.
Right. And they're also trying to get a bunch of information about whether you can spy on people's dreams or enter physically or bring someone against their will, which I think you can do all of those.
You can, but you know what the Wise Ones will say when these silly girls ask them questions that are so dangerous, Yes, there are answers to these questions, and yes, you can have them after you become my apprentice.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to work you really hard.
Not going to work so much for the Aes Sedai.
No, but, they really probably should send more Egwenes, because this is going to be useful in the future.
Well, that does become Egwene's plan. I mean, her whole...
Heck yeah, study abroad, except...
student system? Yeah, study abroad, yeah. Except abroad is in the Waste.
Yeah, study new and different kinds of powers. Yeah.
Gotta wonder if they'll ever get that out to Shara. Study abroad in Shara, come back with a few new tattoos.
It's really punk rock over there.
No. I was going to do something with I do the rains down in Shara, but it doesn't work.
Just looking over my next few notes.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this chapter. It's little bits and pieces again.
The next little bit, I actually set
Oh,
this...
here's one.
Sure.
Where Elayne says, Elayne knew little more of Jito than it existed. I thought she was BFFs. She's like totally close with Aviendha, right? They spent a bunch of time together. Shouldn't she know a little more about it? I thought she was like kind of, not like well-versed, but at least versed in Jito.
I think she maybe knows a little bit more than she's saying there, but I don't think she spends a ton of, or has really time to spend a lot of time with Aviendha until later, till soon, really. Mm-hmm. So Egwene shows up, and Aviendha's...
Yeah, she's spending a lot more time with her in Ebudar.
Soon they get to know each other really well.
But they do already consider themselves near sisters.
That's
right?
true.
That's the whole argument. That's the whole thing that Aviendha's like, I have to protect him for my near sister. I and she's coming back with that knife to be like, I've betrayed you. You can slit my throat if you want. Like.
Yeah, a couple people in Discord are making the point that they do get closer over time, and it's a near sister of my near sister situation. But because Aviendha feels like she has to look after Rand for Elayne because Elaine's such good friends with Egwene, who she is super tight with. But like my bestie's bestie.
Gotcha.
It's part of it anyway.
You were going to say something before I brought that up?
Oh, yeah. I highlighted a little bit to read about Siuan and Leanne's little ruse that they're pulling on all of the Salidar Six, which is another situation where Aes Sedai are underestimating everyone around them, especially
Shocking,
considering
really.
like those two women were their bosses like months ago, and all of a sudden they've just forgotten how relevant they can be. Yeah, I've ranted about this on the show.
Siuan had the reputation of a strong-willed and devious manipulator, and to a lesser extent, so had Leanne. This idea that like just because they can't channel, they're lesser, they're not less intelligent, they're less capable, is definitely a trap the wise ones fall into. It's the trap of the ivory tower.
That's so silly. Yeah, they're absolutely no less capable at doing anything other than like blowing stones into pieces. Other than like having a big weapons, like that's the only thing they now can't do that they couldn't do before. It just seems crazy to me that you would, throw that away. In any case, I'll
read it up.
Yeah, it's a paragraph. Leanne spoke up. Don't you think we should go now? Siuan snorted contemptuously at the timidity, and Leanne cut her eyes at her sharply. Yes, you'll want to have as much time in the tower as possible, Siuan said, diffident in turn, and Leanne sniffed. They really did it very well. Shiriam and the others never suspected that Siuan and Leanne were not simply two stilled women clinging to a purpose that might keep them alive, clinging to the edge of what they had been. Two women childishly at one another's throats all the time. The Aes Sedai should have remembered that Siuan and Leanne had the reputation of strong-willed and devious manipulators, and, to a lesser extent, so had Leanne. I misread that a little bit, but you get the point. Had they presented a unified front, or shown their true faces, the Six would have remembered, and looked hard at everything the pair said. But divided, spitting rancor in each other's faces, all but groveling to the Aes Sedai and plainly not even aware of it? When one was reluctantly forced to agree with what the other said, it lent extra weight. When one objected on obviously frivolous grounds, so did that. Elayne knew they used the pretense to guide Shiriam and the others towards supporting Rand. She just wished she knew what else they used it for.
And I think what else they're using it for is convincing the Salidar Six to bring in Egwene as Amyrlin's seat. Or to convince the Salidar Six to convince the council.
Yeah.
Or the little hall.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I think that's what he's alluding to.
This is actually kind of fun, and reading that, I think it popped out in my mind because I've been doing a lot of reading about the Supreme Court recently, and just kind of trying to understand what goes on and why. And during arguments, I noticed this interesting thing that happens in the Supreme Court that doesn't seem to happen in other courts, where basically one of the high judges will ask litigator a question, and the judge isn't asking the litigator the question because he wants to hear the answer. The judge knows that he's asking a difficult question to the litigator, and the litigator will make an argument that he wants someone else to hear. He wants because he knows that argument's going to happen or whatever. Or essentially, sometimes the judges will ask questions to bend the argument into different places that's happening in front of them in order to sway the other judges and the questions they might ask. And it becomes quite interesting to read if you're into that kind of thing.
It sounds very Aes Sedai.
Yeah, this is Swan and Leanne are doing that. They're having an argument, a fake argument essentially, to benefit those around them, so that once everybody else witnesses that argument, they come to the conclusion that Swan and Leanne just steered them to.
And this is where I really do think the Grey Aja was somewhat wasted. I would have loved to have seen some beautiful arguments orchestrated by the Grey Aja, or manipulation through verbal stuff in that way, that I just feel like we never, we get so few examples of the Grey Aja. Now, that being said, all the Ajas are ineffective at their stated goal, so that makes sense that we would never actually see anyone from the Grey debating and negotiating. Because then they might be effective, and we wouldn't want that going on.
Seem to generally do a bad job. That's another thing I've ranted about, but we know that there's a reason there's a bad job happening.
As I said, there's a reason the stormtroopers were a bad shot.
True. Sometimes you want to be a bad shot. Sometimes it benefits you.
Right. Sometimes you actually don't want to hit your target. You just want to scare them a little bit. Make them run a little faster.
Oh, man. And just on a personal note, something that bothered me reading this chapter is, some of these lines, man, when, Elayne's trying to get the Aes Sedai to, not think about bad thoughts or whatever, and, don't drop a murdral into your midst again. And then Anaya says, "Child," Anaya said gently, "you have been doing very good work, but that doesn't excuse a peevish mouth. You have been given a number of privileges," Myrell said, not at all gently, "but you seem to forget that they are privileges." Oh my god, I think I would lose my face in that moment. I just got to give it to Elayne a little bit. Just be like, you know what? I think you're all tied to chairs now. I'm going to come back in a few hours. We're going to discuss who's teaching who what.
No, that's a good point.
If you ever want to go back to the real world, you're going to start being respectful.
And I of course, do you know who I think dropped the murdral in among them?
Shiriam?
Of course, the Dark Friend.
Yeah. I noticed also in a moment here, when they wander into the nightmare, Shiriam's one of the ones that's the most shaken by it. I think it was the most real to her. Or she was, one of the ones that would have made it more real in her mind, because she has that ever-present fear, failing or whatever, and being
maybe
tortured.
It was her nightmare. Well, yeah.
Shiriam's one, and wait, I mean, are any other Dark Friends here right now?
No, I don't think so. Of the Salidar Six, Shiriam's the only Dark Friend that we're aware of.
Okay.
We've investigated them thoroughly. And then everybody else has the protagonist protection.
Yeah.
Right after this, we get the line, Myrell had been increasingly hard on Nynaeve the past weeks, which I think I talked about already.
Yeah. That's another thing I didn't really catch. That's interesting.
That's just the next paragraph down. It's right after your privileges line. So it's she's just sort of being like, yeah, you've got privileges. And it's like,
you have so much privileges. You have so much more privileges.
And don't even think about taking Lan away from me. I don't have a lot for the next page or two. It's pretty...
Two more or less. We see bits about Elida's touch on the Amerlin seat, essentially.
Yeah, they head to the study. We see the line about the wasting the power to make the roses grow.
Mm-hmm.
Another harsh cut when Myrell says, and he gave her Braid a tug. I don't think... Very often you do not... Myrell cut her off. For once, do as you were told when you were told. Accepted. And it's like, damn, girl.
Jeez,
seriously, she has been coming down hard on her.
Yeah, I would not last long in that environment. I'd be out of there so fast.
And again, people make the good point that Lan is in a really terribly emotional state, and that emotional state is probably reflecting back into her mind as well. So it might not just be...
Oh, that's a good point, too.
Angry.
Yeah.
But I think she's specifically being hard on Nynaeve, and that's not her being a general anger person.
Yeah.
That was poorly said, but you got the point.
Yeah. And I was thinking also, that Lan's generally enraged and upset and is not happy about going and being Myrell's warder. And, his Moraine just died, or he thinks she just died. And I can't, I know Myrell has other bonds, but I can't imagine how that would, or I guess I would imagine that it would affect her mood at least a little darkly to have Lan brooding there all the time in her mind.
A warder darkly?
Oh yeah, right after what you read, Myrell tells Nynaeve to go find Leanne, which is impossible because Lan has already left, but Nynaeve just leaves anyway, knowing that what Myrell said is impossible. So basically, rather than correct her, she goes and looks, despite the fact that she knows the task is impossible. Sounds like something I would do.
Yeah. And the next time we see them is them just waking up in the morning with her being like, yeah, I didn't find her. Her own night had been one long fuel search through the streets of Tarvalon, empty save for herself, pigeons, rats, and heaps of garbage. So that's how the next chapter opens up.
Oh.
Is Nynaeve being like, I found nothing, it sucked, then I woke up.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten that she leaves now, and then we don't see her again until the next chapter.
She manages to avoid the torture machine. Yay!
Yeah.
For once, she gets a break.
After this, I have all the... They spend pages and pages going through Elida's stuff and reading reports in Teleran-Riyadh, the kind of disappearing reports. And there's stuff here. Mm-hmm. I don't know how into this we want to get, because I feel like we're just kind of going over a lot of things that we've already been over.
Just a couple. I have a couple of points, but I
Absolutely.
agree. I don't want to go too deep into this because a lot of it's kind of repetitive.
And there's something in here, I'm sure, because there's 3 pages of it.
Right. There's nuggets of details in here that are worth pulling out in all, as Jordan does, he's hiding interesting stuff in all of the repetition. So first of all, I think that they see Elida pop into the dream, do her quote-unquote foretelling, and pop out. I think that's just her dream. It's not an actual foretelling. She's dreaming about maybe having a foretelling. And, we've had this thing where she said the White Tower will kneel before the Amyrlin seat. And she's interpreting that as it will be unified under me. But yeah, that's her interpretation of the foretelling, not her actual foretelling, if that makes sense.
Right. Oh, because we've established this before, but Elida does have foretellings. They're real and they're accurate, but she interprets them so badly that she's almost always wrong about what they mean. The other one being, and we see a reference to it here too, how the what is it, the ruling house of Andor is key or something like that?
Right.
To the winning the last battle.
And we know at the time she did that foretelling, the royal house of Andor was Tygraine, Mantir.
Yeah.
And which is Rand's mother. So Rand is really who the foretelling was about.
He's the key. Or, I mean, I guess you could say Rand's mom is the key if you want. That's fine, too. That also works.
Right. Follow her. Follow her to Rand. That's absolutely the key. So that's one of those little... her foretelling is just so wrong because she didn't think about the timing of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Radio. She's also making the point that Elayne is key in the last battle because of Rand, etc., she says. So, the Royal House of Andor means a lot more than Elayne Trakand. It's a lot more than that. And at different times, it's different people as well.
Yeah, and at various points, Elayne
Different
is
families.
key to the last battle. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And certainly as the leader who everyone unites behind. Absolutely. And then we get some stuff about Alviarin seeming to be in control because we know she's Black Ajah and has secretly blackmailed Elida and taken control. So all the terrible orders coming out of the White Tower are sourced from Alviarin.
Mm-hmm. I did notice some of the important reports come from Danelle, who's Messana.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out too, that these reports, that they're specifically everything about Matin Stepaneos, who we know later gets kidnapped by the White Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And the assuming is Matin Stepaneos is willing to go against the Dragon Reborn in aid to the White Tower. But we know that Stepaneos is directly under the control of Samael and Ilion. So of course,
Right.
it's basically Samael being like, yeah, of course I'll, it's essentially, it's literally Messana giving them a report from Samael. I just thought about the fact that whole connection is essentially Danelle is Messana and Matin Stepaneos is doing everything he does at the command of Samael.
Nodding.
I'll cut that down in post. I'm doing a lot of rambling tonight to get to my points, so I think the first half of most of those arguments is going to be cut out.
Happens to the best of us. Oh, and kind of to prove your point here, a couple lines after that, Elayne would have given a pretty to know what Elida proposed that Samael was willing to support, or at least let Matin Stepanos say he would support. And that is go against the Dragon Reborn, basically. Fight the Dragon Reborn. And of course Samael said, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I imagine there's they talk about escorting him back. So there is that plan kind of to kidnap him. So I think there's that sort of like, if the Dragon Reborn was to be in our possession, would you follow us to the last battle? Or there may be some of that mixed in. Because we see them give that sort of message to like Coliver.
Nodding.
And sort of they convince her to take power once they have Rand, in quotes, out of the way. And I imagine there's similar sort of letters going out to other rulers.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out this line, too, about Shamirin. She was the one who was part of Elida's own Ajah and was demoted for political reasons so that Elida could then demote other people, basically. So she went after her friends in order to prove that she could go after enemies. And for a while, I always got Shamirin and Shiriam confused. And, I mean, you gotta look at those two and be like, man, those names look the same, especially here in this side-by-side.
They're really close.
They're really close.
Shamarin, but wasn't Shamarin a yellow? Or
but she was
Shamirin?
still supporting...
Right. Oh, she is one of Elida's. Yeah.
She was Elida's supporter. I wasn't sure if she was red or not. She was yellow. Radio's agreeing with you. So yes, she was yellow, but she was a supporter at least.
Yeah.
And she came down on her. She made her not Aes Sedai for something really silly. Don't even remember anymore.
Yeah, it's something about being too weak, or she just didn't get something done fast enough, or something like that. Or Elida started threatening punishments, and she was the one that dropped to her knees and cried first, or something like that. And then Elida demoted her.
Oh, just
to accept it.
Didn't have the mannerisms of an Aes Sedai.
Yeah, so. It was something not even terribly. Yeah. That didn't even make a ton of sense.
And that's the woman who Gawain sees washing laundry when he returns to the tower.
Oh.
Because she goes and hides out because she's quote unquote not an Aes Sedai anymore. So she gets a job washing laundry.
Oh.
And Gawain brings her to Gareth Bryn / Suan. And Shimmerin knows about the tunnel that Suan and Gareth Bryn used to sneak back in and rescue Egwene. The only reason they know about that tunnel is because Shimmerin told them. So this is sort of planting the seeds for freaking Egwene's escape in the attack on the tower in book 13. Damn it, Jordan. It just, you start pulling these threads and you're like, oh, and then it goes here, and then it goes here, and then you're like, oh my god, it just keeps going. Okay.
This goes right to the end. I just wanted to point out that the fact that Shemmarin was demoted to accept it, or that could be possible, and then runs away, at least at this point, the Salidar Six didn't believe Elayne at all when she told them that. They said, well, that's impossible, so that certainly isn't true. And they just found evidence of that.
It's an I told you so moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she gets, she doesn't say it.
But no one says oh, so you were right.
Yeah. It gives her a lot of credibility, even if they wouldn't, give it to her. She can take it. She can look at them and be like, yeah, I was right.
They're just so obsessed with being higher than everyone. They can never admit that someone could know something that they don't. It's so ridiculous. Why would she lie about that? What benefit? What possible benefit? I mean, of course, don't just take everybody's word for it, but...
Well, she hasn't sworn the oaths, so you never know. She could be lying about anything.
That's probably what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm. And again, not a little bit. We get the statement on the stools. We've seen fewer and fewer at every visit, and now there are none. We sort of assume that had to do with who Elida had to answer to on the hall. The more people she had to answer to, the more stools there were, and vice versa. And so now, pretty much at this point, I assume she's ruling the White Tower with an iron fist, other than the secret orders she's getting from Alviarn, who's controlling her.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get information from the border because Salidar is in the south, and that's a long way, and they don't have traveling yet, because Egwene hasn't given it to them yet.
Yeah. I like here, this is almost like a throwaway line, but Elayne's remembering Swan telling her something about survival, essentially. And coming from Swan, who's been both, I just enjoyed, a lion survives by being a lion, she had once told Elayne, and a mouse by being a mouse. It's just a good little bit of country wisdom there.
And yet Suan made a very poor mouse.
Yeah, she does. She made a poor and reluctant mouse was the next line. But she does make a mouse when she needs to.
Yeah. She's better at being a lion, but...
Yeah. When I was a lion, I survived by acting like a lion. She's like, now that I'm a mouse, I survive by acting like a mouse. Basically, Elayne, shut your mouth. Be quiet. Nod. Look like you're afraid whether or not you are. It doesn't matter if you are. That's not the point.
Right. Look like you respect them even if you don't.
Put on a performance for the lion.
Right. There's another Linny saying here. The pike does not ask the frog's permission before dining.
Yeah.
I love the Linny sayings.
I didn't know what that meant at first. Is a pike of fish that eats frogs?
Yeah.
Okay. I
That's the silverpike that Suwan's always referring to. The silverpike in the water.
That's what I thought. I just don't know. Didn't know.
And I would assume they eat frogs like real quick.
At first I imagined like a crane, like a bird. But then I don't know. I literally don't know.
Yeah, no. Pikes are real fish. They're sort of long, predatory fish.
Makes sense, yeah.
Long and sleek, fast, yeah. Generally a lot of teeth. You know, big teeth. Run away.
Pointy teeth.
Oh, wait, no, that's our body. We get these decrees, which they're like, Elida must be near panic, and we know that's Black Aja controlling her through Alviarn, so a lot of her, like, crazy decrees and stuff like that. Oh, Bambi, I like that a pike is a regular pike, but a silver pike is a shark.
It could be. I just Googled it.
So
there is such a thing as a silver pike. Not that means anything. And it's a giant fish of some kind. But also, peaches are poisonous, so maybe silver pike are the size of sharks and have teeth like that in this universe.
The wheel turns. Evolution changes. Sharks don't have to stay exactly the same.
Oh, it is a species of carnivorous fish. I'm learning as I read right now. I don't know anything about this. Brady, I'm posting this just for you because you commented on my chips and I'm not eating chips. But I want to promote these seaweed chips. They're awesome. Really spicy. It's some brand I found at a local Chinese supermarket that's like right down the street from me. Like actually spicy.
Not Portland spicy?
Yeah, not Portland spicy. Well, if you're ever interested in eating dried seaweed, you can get them in any kind of flavor, apparently. I just got into these recently. They're good.
Well, do you want to have a nightmare?
Yeah.
Do you want to have a nightmare?
Yeah. I totally just highlighted the line where it begins. From like a line where it ends and a few points in between. Essentially what's happening is here is the women are continuing to go through Elida's stuff and figuring out as much as they can.
Oh, there was one last line in here where Myrelle lets it slip that really gives away what they're talking about, where she says, perhaps we can send a message to Egwene through the Aiel woman. Mm-hmm. Suain gave a loud and very phony cough. And then... Elayne completely misses that and interrupts. But like that whole message they were going to send to Egwene is all about summoning her to be the Amerlin seat. And Myrelle gave it away, and Suan is pissed at her for giving it away. Gave a very loud phony cough to cover it up. And that was my last point before the nightmare. Yeah,
it's a goofy little scene because, well, at first I didn't actually put it all together because I thought that they may have been suggesting getting in touch with the Aiel woman to pass a message to Egwene, who could pass a message to Rand. I thought that was the point. Of course, I got all centered around that. I realized that it wasn't now, though. But when Elayne says, how can you think Rand would listen to anything Elida says? Of course, she's wrong about her assumption here. Do you think he does not know she was Red Aja and what that means? They aren't going to offer him support, and you know it. We have to warn him. And then Shiriam says, and how do you suggest we do that? Well, just like what was just suggested. You pass it through a dream. Or to someone near him. It's not that hard anymore. Anyway, moving forward.
You have a telegraph. You can pass messages.
Yeah. Send him a freaking email, dummy. He'll get it eventually.
And by the way, this chapter, how much stuff I feel like we discovered, I feel like I had 2 or 3 mind-blowing moments in this chapter, and this is the kind of stuff I'm really excited about for the slog. Because I feel like there's just books of this kind of crap.
It's been picking up, too. I've noticed since we started Lord of Chaos, each time we sit down is for like a longer period of time. We used to sit down for like 3 hours in an evening and do 2 chapters, or like 3. It has happened before. Mm-hmm. And now we're definitely doing 1 each time, but it's taking as long as some of our like 2-episode sessions used to take sometimes. There's just that much more to talk about.
There is. And it's like one of those things where it builds on itself, right? And more details begets more details and touches on more each little sentence touches on a couple of different possible plot lines, you know? And we've had to build those plot lines. But now it's like, man, you can jump between them and reference this one and pull a bunch of details out and then reference that one and pull a bunch of details out, and I get to talk about them all. And yeah, it takes longer because I like to talk. But yeah, no, I think we should take back the term the slog. I'm what is it? Reclaiming derogatory terms.
Yeah, reclaiming the slog and making it a good thing. The slog because there's so much.
God, I can't wait to read the slog. Yeah, the slog is the best part of Wheel of Time. Yeah. God, you really want to get into the characters? Go read the slog. That's really the best part.
I like it. In any case, we see from Elaine's perspective here, because Myrell is berating her at this point, or Shiriam, actually, says she was suddenly saved by a distant screaming, followed by wordless shouts from the anteroom. She was closest to the door, but she ran through with the others on her heels. You see they're in the Keeper's room, and there's a nightmare that the Aes Sedai are just kind of walking into and not really understanding. Elayne knows they don't understand what they're doing. She tries to warn them, but they go in anyway. To their detriment.
Well, by the time she gets there, someone's already been sucked in, right? So,
someone, yeah.
I mean, a fair number of people, right?
Oh, yeah, this says Anaya, Morvrin, Carlinia were gone, but one of the tall doors was still swinging shut.
Okay, so they hear the screaming, and that has them run towards it, and running towards it gets them into the nightmare. But it's the scream that has them running towards it. Do I have that sequence of events correct?
I believe so, because especially because when Elayne describes seeing the women they get to the edge of it, and then their image sort of blurs, and then they're in the nightmare. And the same thing happens to Elayne when she goes in on purpose.
What I was looking for is I was rereading it to look for some sort of evidence that Damandred created the nightmare for them. I don't see it, but I'm sticking to it. It's my headcanon. This is a headcanon situation where there's no actual evidence in the text other than him popping out at the end being like, "Wah-ha-ha, look what I did." You know, but like other than that, like
that's basically what happens, yeah.
Yeah. But you did nothing. Oh, didn't I? No, nothing. So my best guess is that he made the nightmare. And that's what he's taking credit for.
I think so, and Elaine's yelling at them the whole time, but they're all totally sucked into the nightmare. I guess I was just going to say that there's good evidence that Damandred did it, and I had thought that this may have been Shiriam's fault in the past, if only because it seems accurate. It seems like what this would actually look like if it were really happening. And I don't know how capable, Nynaeve or Elayne or even Swan might be about building real working torture equipment. You know what I mean? That's what I thought anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
Seems like this is Dark Friend work.
Yeah. Could be her nightmare, but except the nightmare was already there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah, but it could be strengthened by her experience.
that was another thing I thought of that. Well, I guess everybody kind of appears to be injured in the end. Cut all that. I have nothing. I want to. I really want to. You can leave it in if you want. I want to blame Shiriam somehow, or I wanted to, but it's just way more likely that this is all Demandred here.
I mean, Shuriam could also be terrible. I don't know.
And one thing Elayne's making a point about, this backs me up a little here, is that when the Aes Sedai get afraid of the nightmare and they start trying to channel to fight it, fighting it and channeling to fight it puts more of their belief behind it. So it actually makes the nightmare stronger. And Elayne's like trying to tell them this while it's happening. Of course, it doesn't work. But at some point, Elayne makes that point that the dream becomes, or the nightmare becomes more powerful when the women try to fight it. Because by fighting it, they acknowledge its reality.
Right, and by fighting it, you don't mean like shutting down and being like, this isn't real, this isn't
no,
real.
I mean like
You
trying to set it on fire. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Stab it with a sword.
Right.
Sticking it with the pointy end. It doesn't work in this case.
And finally, it looks like Elayne gets them out of it. She walks into the nightmare and finds herself laying on her stomach, looking at the floor, and her hands are tied behind her back.
This particular scene in the audiobook is... Kate Redding does an amazing job of the escalating tension in Elaine's voice as she keeps being like, the corridor, like, come on, we're gonna get turned. Like, that little, the way she does that is just excellent. And like, it's, a lot of times what I'll be doing is I listen to the audiobooks when I sleep, and just because
Oh god.
when I wake up, I just sort of let whatever part of the audiobook it is that wakes me up. But the panic in that scene almost always wakes me up. It almost always brings me out of a sleep because the panic in her voice is so intense. It actually triggers my like, oh god, something's wrong, I need to wake up and like deal with it response.
I hear that. I actually didn't think about it too much while reading this, but there's a knife slowly sliding across Elaine's throat, or it's coming closer and closer, and then in the corridor, exclamation point. The blade began to slide, and then suddenly she was staring at colored floor tiles under her nose, clapping hands to her throat, marveling that they were free to move. She felt wetness and brought her fingers up to stare at them. Blood, but only a tiny smear.
And this is one of those scenes. This whole scene is so well done horror. Like, it is just a horrific scene from start to finish. And not to talk about the TV show too much, but I really do hope they play up some of the horror elements and really scare you in the TV show. I think that's a really good way to raise stakes for our characters.
I agree.
Let's make this world a scary place with real risks.
Yeah. I felt that way since we started talking about the show, when it really became a reality that they were going to make it. I really hope they really go crazy on the horror element, because I think that's one of the ways that Wheel of Time really still stands up to modern fantasy, and even series like GOT that has a lot of other gratuitous violence and sex and all kinds of adult stuff. I mean, Wheel of Time definitely has gratuitous violence, not so much the sex, but the horror element is really terrifying. You could really play that up, like that scene from, I think it was was it the last episode that we recorded? Summerhog. There's like a 3-page Summerhog section where she's torturing people, and it's absolutely terrifying.
It's the last one we released.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just, and this is actually the Lord of Chaos. One of the reasons it's so good is that it is filled with a lot of those horror elements, right? Ending with a meat grinder crescendo of bodies, right? Like, it's bad. And there's torture throughout all that, and like, you could really play it up because there's this period of time where everything seems normal. He's hanging out with Min, Perrin's around. Like, you can sort of be this, like, united, happy family. And then the Aes Sedai come in and just destroy it, and make this just horrible, create this, like, battlefield of blood and gore. And, like, you can do that emotional rubber banding, snap someone from one side to the other.
So many series and stories have, like every fantasy series that's ever been on TV has like these big scenes with swords and magic and all of that. And maybe even terrifying looking creatures who swing really terrifying looking weapons around. But I can't even think of another story where the really big baddies, like the really bad guys, spend like books just like emotionally abusing the main characters, and they're doing it on purpose to make them mentally unstable. You know what I mean? It's a whole different level of effed up stuff that I just really hope they do. I really hope they get in there. I have faith. I have a bit of faith in this regard, because I think the people making it are fans and probably understand it.
So some of these Aes Sedai suffer from some pretty serious damage, right? You've got Shiriam, who she was on the rack, right? So all of her joints were essentially torn. All of her ligaments in her body are torn.
Can't walk right now.
Yeah.
People are bleeding, and I kind of imagine there's some nudity in this scene from just the amount of torn dresses here from the narration.
Well, I mean, Elayne's naked. Well, she's not naked
Split
anymore.
right
She
down the
clothed
front
herself,
or
but
something,
yeah, he skinned her dress, or he cut off her dress like he was skinning an animal. So, oh yeah, Carolinia's hair is short, and it takes a while for it. Basically, never.
Oh yeah, so
a
a bunch of it was burned off. Can't heal that.
Yeah, she was going headfirst down into the cauldron. That is a funny little thing. You have to wonder: is there a magic that would let you generate hair?
I mean, the illusion of hair, certainly.
But like you're certainly, if you're healing someone, you're regenerating skin, right? You must be accelerating the reproduction of skin cells. And that's the natural body's response. Could you not accelerate the growth of hair follicles?
I would think so.
Yeah. You know what you would call that spell that makes your hair grow? A weave.
No, that was actually really good. Kelsey said, no. Seth? I thought it was going to be some bad, dirty joke. I was like, I don't know where this is going, so go.
I'm proud of myself.
It's just a weave.
The amount of the amount of disdain and discord right now is making me extremely proud of myself. Oh, it took a while to build up that one.
I know it seemed impressive, Egwene, but it's just a weave.
Oh god, something about Nynaeve's hair being just a weave. That's why she tugs on her braid so much. It makes her good at channeling. Oh god, okay, I can come up with a better one. So Elayne doesn't go. The next thing I have is Elayne doesn't go right back into her body. She pops into the Lion Throne. Basically, not the Lion Throne, but the chamber that holds the Lion Throne. There's a name for that. Just in the royal palace.
Discord is guessing throne room.
Because there's that room with the queens looking down, right? Like, that's that whole thing that, like, Rand sort of is, like, sitting in that chair, and he's like, why are you judging me? And they're like, because you're banging your cousin. And he's like, she's not really my cousin, but I don't know that yet, so I'm going to have to go ask.
I had forgotten about that. You know, there's a ancient Roman thing. They had these rooms in their houses. They'd go sit their kid in there, and there would be the wax masks of their dead relatives were hung on the walls. This was like, you were meant to go in there and reflect and think about, you know, all the sacrifices and all the greatness that came from your line and what you were going to do when you grew up. Except it was a distinctly Roman, just like actually looking at your dead relatives. Well, it sounds like that anyway.
That kind of reminds me of a book I read as a kid called The Boy Who Lost His Face. And it's all about, I mean, there's this witch who lives in this building, and, you know, he makes fun of her, and he's a typical teenager. It's like a kid's book. And it turns out that everyone thinks that she steals faces, but she actually makes like realistic human masks of her family.
Cool.
And she's this like sweet old lady who just like paints masks. And I'll cut most of that out, too.
Readout from here. That's okay. I'll just start the readout. I marked a good log section because I didn't feel like I read very much.
Sure.
So, nightmare happened. All the Aes Sedai are pretty messed up and bleeding and limping away. Swan said she wants to stay, and Elayne did too. The 6 Aes Sedai vanished. With a last glance at Swan, Elayne was only a moment behind, but she did not go to Salidar. Someone would very likely be coming to heal the scrape on her neck if they had noticed it, but for a little while they would be concerned with the 6 Aes Sedai, who would wake looking as if they had been pushed through some monstrous clockworks. Elayne had those few minutes, and another destination in mind. The grand hall in her mother's palace in Camelin did not appear around her with any ease. There was a feel of resistance before she stood on a red and white tiled floor, beneath the great arched roof, between rows of massive white columns. Once more, light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The huge windows overhead, depicting the White Lion of Andor, alternating with the earliest queens of the realm, and scenes of great Andoran victories, were indistinct with the night outside. Immediately, she saw the difference from what she knew that had made coming here difficult. On the dais, at the end of the hall, where the lion throne should have stood, was instead a grandois monstrosity, made of dragons, sparkling gold and red and gilt and enamel, with sunstones for their eyes. Her mother's throne had not been removed from the chamber. It stood on a kind of pedestal, behind and above the monstrous thing. Elayne walked slowly down the hall and climbed the white marble stairs to stare up at the gilded throne of Andoran queens, the White Lion of Andor, picked out in moonstones against a field of rubies on the back, would have stood above her mother's head. "What are you doing, Rand al'Thor?" she whispered harshly. "What do you think you are doing?" She was terribly afraid that he was bungling matters without her to guide him between the pitfalls. True, he had handled the Terrans well enough, and apparently the Cairhienin, but her people were different, bluff and straightforward, with a dislike of being maneuvered or bullied. What had worked in Tyr or Cairhien could blow up in his face like an illuminator's display of fireworks. If only she could be with him. If only she could warn him about the Tower's embassy. Elida had to have some trick hidden, to spring when he least expected it. Would he be sensible enough to see it? For that matter, she had no idea what Salidar's embassy's orders were. Despite Swan's efforts, most Aes Sedai in Salidar seemed of two minds about Rand al'Thor. He was the Dragon Reborn, prophesied savior of humanity, but then again, he was a man who could channel, doomed to madness, death, and destruction. Take care of him, Min, she thought. Reach him quickly and take care of him. A stab of jealousy hit her that Min would be there to do what she wanted to. She might have to share him, but she would have part of him all to herself. She would bond him as her warder, whatever it took. It will be done. She stretched a hand up toward the lion throne, to swear as queens had sworn since there was an Andor. The pedestal was too high for her to reach, but the intent should count. It will be done. Time was running out. An Aes Sedai would be coming, back in Salidar, to wake her and heal the pitiful scratch on her neck. With a sigh, she stepped out of the dream. Demandred moved out from behind the columns of the grand hall and looked from the two thrones to where the girl had vanished. Elayne trakened, unless he missed his guess wildly, and, using a minor terengrial by the faint look of her, one made for training beginning students, he would have given much to know what was in her head, but her words and expression had been plain enough. She did not like what al'Thor was doing here, not in the least, and meant to do something about it. A determined young woman, he suspected. In any case, another thread in the tangle yanked, however feeble the pull turned out to be. Let the Lord of Chaos rule, he told the thrones, though he still wished he knew why it had to be so, and opened a gateway to leave Tel'aran'rhiod.
I like, once again, how badly he misinterprets her,
Yeah.
what she's doing. She intends to do something about it. Kiss him into submission.
Rand al'Thor, you dumb boy. Get that chair off the stairs. All right. It's basically what's going to happen.
Right. No, I mean, it's definitely a political problem for her. You know, like, it sets her up to appear as though she is giving him he is giving her the throne.
Right.
And that's not okay with her supporters. So he is being dumb, right? It's not like this is nothing. But at the same time, it's not like she's going to, raise up a rebellion against Randall Thor, the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. What she plans to do is bond him as a warder, not take him down. So.
She has other plans. Chapter 8 is The Storm Gathers. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Definitely a Nynaeve chapter.
Yeah, it's always, yeah.
But yeah, I think we said a lot. He says Lord of Chaos rules. Another thread in the tangle yanked, however feeble the pole turned out to be. And that's where I think that pole was probably the dream. But that's my support right there, is that he created the dream, is that line.
That's what I thought. I was actually just about to ask that. Is the pole... I think, what I got out of this is Elayne thinks the strange resistance pole thing when she's moving in the dream is because the room is different slightly, or because there's a new piece of furniture in the room. I think that's what she thinks, but I think that Demandred doesn't want her to move. Is that fair? And that's what the resistance is? That she's pushing her will against his, but she doesn't know it. So it's a little harder to move.
Or maybe he's following her, and that's somehow makes it harder. I don't know. Yeah,
that's as good an explanation as mine. Yeah, that's what I thought, or that it would have something to do with that, but I'm not sure. It could just as easily be the furniture. She could be right,
because we've seen the furniture change cause that kind of resistance before, right? When Elida changed the Emerald study, they couldn't go there. So,
yeah.
So that's one of those things where
they had to go somewhere else in the towers, and that right, and then they walked to
So that's resistance. That's something we've seen before. Is the only reason why I don't think it's something Demandred did, which is why I think the nightmare is what he did, not the pulling her to the throne room. I think he followed her to the throne room. I think he was at the location where the nightmare was, and then when everybody else left and she stayed, he was like, "Ooh, where's she going?" and followed her to... And then he's like, "Oh, that must be Elayne Trakand because she went to the throne room."
Yeah.
So that's my guess, is that he was basically there at their meeting place, preparing a trap for them, which was the nightmare.
Nodding to that.
Just to cause chaos. Yeah. So that's, this is the leadership of the Rebel Tower. He knows about them. They've been reporting to him. So, yeah. No, that's... It's a argument built on a house of sticks, but I think it's as solid as anything we're going to get out of this chapter as to what Demandred's up to. It's just tough to figure out what his... because he's kind of puttering around in the background for all this chapter, pulling strings, and then he disappears for 6 books. And apparently what he's doing is he went off to Shara to go make that his land, and bring them back, bring the armies back. But it's like, man, it feels the Demandred we see here and Bao the Wild feel like very disconnected characters to me. They just feel... And I feel like the argument they make is, well, he fell in love with the woman in Shara and basically wanted to use his deal with the Dark One to protect the Sharans. And that kind of changed who he was a little bit. And so that's where they're kind of different people because he changed. I see that argument, but at the same time, it's not my best... I don't know. They feel like different characters to me.
Yeah.
So I always think of that one as Bao the Wild, and this one is Demandred. Yeah.
I honestly didn't think about it too much, and we only know we don't know a ton about Bao other than Reverse Souls. I do. It's a super cool story, and I'd like more of it. As always, I wish we could get more of that story.
Maybe in the TV show. We know Logain has a bigger role. Well, who's Logain's nemesis? Tame. Who's Tame linked closely with? Demandred. So maybe we're going to see a little more of Demandred doing stuff in that plot line. I would be interested to see the Taim... Sorry, I keep saying Tame. Taim Demandred, Loghain sort of triangle would be an interesting one to sort of see going on in the background while Rand's doing his little triangle.
Yeah.
Maybe Rand's off fighting Ishamael while, Loghain is encountering some Demandred. That would be cool. I'm entirely okay with them adding in stuff like that to give these sort of Forsaken and some of the background characters more scenes so we can get to know them before they could become important characters.
There could be a lot more happening. We know there's lots happening behind the scenes that we just never see.
Right.
You could write that stuff.
Right, without changing the story at all, you just show some of these encounters.
You sure could fluff out a lot.
Yeah.
Doing all sorts of different things,
They call that job the fluffer.
Oh dear.
It's to keep the story engorged with detail, because when you're writing for such a long time, it's possible for the storyline to get a little flaccid. So in between scenes, you want to make sure they're well connected by a lot of plot. So you bring in a fluffer to make sure that
well connected by a lot of plot. I just knew that if I said that like that, it would be funny. I don't know what that means.
Huge
connected.
tracts of land. Yeah. Oh god, so apparently I am just nailing the bad jokes tonight. Patrick totally ruined my segue. Wasn't that a perfect segue? Just ruined it. Walking away. Whatever. In editing, it'll sound like it just went right into the chapter. This will all be cut out. Live content only. So let me tell you what I really think about... Oh, and never mind. Oh, did you hear our argument? I think we had a discussion about it in the latest released episode, or maybe the one before that. We had a bit of an Arengar discussion.
Oh, Arengar as a representative of the trans... It's not a good example,
Yeah.
I think, was the argument that I was
Yeah.
trying to make. Although, I mean, I feel like it's grasping,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we came to the conclusion that we were basically like, that's, it's not trans representation. Don't try and make it trans representation. It's something different. Yeah. I think anyway, we said it better in that one. Go listen to it so we don't have to repeat ourselves and say it wrong. Because that was a good argument. That was actually well done for us, I think, and it edited down very well. So,
Okay.
So yeah, definitely. Was it radio? Which episode was it? Was it 286? I get so confused between the ones we're recording, the ones I'm editing, and the ones that were released. So I'm always like, I've got 3 different set points, and I always have to check and see where we are. Oh yeah, so it makes sense. At the end of, in WoT Spoilers 284, which is the end of the Lord of Chaos prologue, it's a Forsaken chapter, so that's probably Arengar is resurrected. So that's where we talk about it, which is, I feel, a good place to talk about that.
That might be a good social media post in the future. If this is how the community feels about this being a trans thing. Or maybe it won't be, because that's a hot topic that people will scream at each other about. I don't know. I'll think about that before I do anything about it. It's just an interesting thing to talk about and debate, which is why it might be interesting to pose the question, even though I already know which way I fall on it.
I don't know if you can hear the horns going by, but the BLM protest.
Oh, man.
I call it, is going by.
Yeah, I was walking down the street the other day, coming back from the grocery store, and I saw a line of cars like that doing the social distance protest or whatever, like just honking and driving down the street with the signs taped to them. And the first truck, the first one in the row was a truck, and it said like "Make America Smart Again" or something like that. And I didn't know if I should wave and cheer them on or not, because I didn't know which side that was.
What you're not,
and then more cars started coming, and the third one said like "Free Palestine" or something. I was like, oh, okay, now I know who you are. But that first one, I was like, oh, I don't.
Should I?
Yeah.
Do I want to? It's like when you see someone waving at you from across the street that you don't recognize, and you want to
Like,
check
look
behind you to make
first.
sure they're not waving. It's,
Yeah.
yeah. Before you wave back.
You're waving at me.
Somebody else, or you're waving at me.
I've totally ignored people I know in public because I just like saw a car honk, like looked at it and kept walking, like I didn't react, you know, and think about it over much. Anyway,
but yeah, I'm gonna stall for a minute just until they get a little further away. It's usually just a minute or so because they're loud.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how. Yeah, I'm not sure how much the microphone's picking up. Can you hear it at all?
I don't hear anything.
Okay, I know Discord does a lot of filtering, so sometimes even when you guys can't hear it,
Yeah, it could be on that.
it still comes through on the recording
Copy.
because Discord does a ton of post processing to the signal.
How about I just do this read? It's about a.
Oh, I
page
guess
and a
yeah,
half.
that works.
Who knows how long that line's going to be anyway.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
Support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?